So now for our second plenary before the lunch period, we will have a high-level panel with industry experts, moderated by Mathéo Bernard of France Renouvelable. So I will read his short bio and then go from there. Mathéo Bernard has been involved in organizations supporting renewable energy throughout his career, becoming France Renouvelable's offshore wind manager earlier this year. France Renewables is the voice of renewable energies in France, defending and promoting the development of renewable energies and bringing together more than 360 members, professionals in the sector spread across all value chains. As co-organizer of FOWT, France Renewables has been a strong supporter of the floating wind industry for over 10 years. So Mathéo, please welcome to the stage and take it from there. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. What a room. Thanks for being here in such great numbers for this 12th edition of FOWT conference. It's a real pleasure to kind of see similar faces, and I'm sure mostly new ones, all gathered around an event that we've been working tirelessly on for months with the Polmer Méditerranée. And before the start, I'd like to especially thank the team of the Polmer Méditerranée, and especially Emeline, Fanny, and Arthur, who worked a lot during many months to bring this event to life. So maybe before start, if I can ask you a quick round of applause for them. Thank you, because that was a huge work from them. So now, it's time for our high-level session, which I have the honor of moderating today. No pressure, of course, especially coming right after Giles Dixon. We have an exceptional panel with us today, and I'd like to invite them to join me on stage. First, we have Régis Brouache-Grain from RTE, the French TSO. We have then Yara Chaktoura from Siemens Gamesa Renewable France. Aldric de Fontbel from Penavel. Benoît Chenu from EDF Renewables. And last but not least, Tina Miriam Fuchs from ENBW. So I will be short for my introduction because as it was mentioned in all the speeches before me, floating offshore wind is clearly a key solution to reach our energy and climate goals, but also get rid of these fossil fuel drugs, as it was mentioned by the president of Brittany region. But while the potential is huge, the objectives are there, as it was presented by the government's international representatives before me. Commercial scale development still comes with significant challenges, and particularly industrial ones. That's what we will discuss now. So several countries, including France, have set ambitious targets that are supported by coordinated maritime spatial planning. But now it's time to move on. It's time to move beyond planning, spatial planning, and to move into industrial execution. To talk about that, I would like to start with you, Régis, because as the TSO, you're the first player that needs to be on site to ensure wind farms can be connected, which could be useful, and to avoid setback like we've seen in Germany, for example. That also means that you're the first player that need to invest, that need to plan the industrial purchases. So how critical is long-term visibility for you in this context? And what does it mean for RTE's strategy?
Thank you, Mathéo. Perhaps first, just we are all convinced here, but no matter the trajectory or the scenario, we can't reach the carbon neutrality by 2050 without an increase in our electricity consumption. And it means that we need offshore generation. And in France, up to 2/3 of the offshore potential is floating. So it's very important for France energy and decarbonization strategy to be able to count on the floating offshore industry. The first steps of the floating industry in France are promising. RTE, the first two connections of pilot floating offshore wind farms are operational, and the 3 farms will be in operation early next year for a total capacity of 100 megawatts. If I go to the development of the commercial floating offshore wind farms, we move ahead. For RTE, the objective is to deliver the grid connection on time and on budget. As for the first 6 offshore connection that we deliver for the multi-year energy plan. But this time, it includes the offshore substation. So for us, it's a new challenge. At this stage, and to achieve this goal, we have started the permitting process of the grid connection before the award of the tenders, AO5 and AO6. It's new. We have the possibility to do that thanks to the renewable acceleration law. And it's very useful because the lead time of the connection is far too long if we stay for a joint permitting process with developers. So for the South Brittany project, we applied for permits in January this year. And we are about to do the same for the FOWT and the Narbonnaise projects early next year. We also have secured the main procurement of all the projects of the second multi-year energy program, including OSS and subsea cables, in a context of high tension on the offshore wind market. So in this field, we also have to anticipate, and we need to have a clear share of responsibility on contracts with producer and developer on one side, and our main supplier on the other side. So that's why we work with the government department on the implementation of a new contractual framework for the offshore wind farms, the next offshore wind farm, to have a clear share of the risks between supplier, producer, TSOs, and also government. And it's very important. We need stability, we need long-term view, but we also need a clear sharing of risk in this industry. And for the future projects of the coming multi-year energy plan, RTE identifies 3 main implementation conditions to build a resilient and stable industrial program. First, we need to set a pace compatible with industrial constraints. Industrial constraints means share of the supply chain bottleneck for the connection, but also for the floating offshore wind farm. We talked about investment in harbors. It will take time. If we want to also to manage interdependencies between commissioning of the connection assets and commissioning of the offshore wind park, we also have to share the planning, to share the critical path, to share the floating margins. It's not so obvious to share this between all actors, but I think it's really a necessity to succeed in floating offshore wind future. the first condition. Second, we have to guarantee economic competitiveness for the whole electric system. So the experience curve has been established for fixed bottom offshore, but will need to be demonstrated for floating over the next 10 years. And of course, we will have an increase in the connection cost rise. So we will have to demonstrate competitiveness for the whole cost, the full cost, farm and connection. And the third condition is to maximize local content, French and European content, because one of the conditions of acceptability of this new industry in the long term is employment. So for the future project, we have a very large ambition to grow to 50% of French offshore components in the connection projects, which means probably a factory for submarine cables located in France, and also to benefit from the experience of French yards for topside, but also for jackets. So we'll have to work all together to develop that, but I insist, for me, it's a condition of acceptability and of feasibility of the new program in floating offshore wind farms. So to succeed, we need to maintain what I call a crew spirit between government department, suppliers, industry, TSOs, of course, and local authorities, which helps a lot to demonstrate the value of such an industry.
Is it working? Yeah. Thanks, Regis, for this. I love the crew spirit. I will reuse it for sure. I will borrow it to you. So as we've just heard, connection to the grid is a core issue for offshore wind, and TSOs need long-term visibility for their short-term commitments, such as investments, industrial purchases, but it also applies to other industrial players, such as, for example, turbine manufacturers. So Yara, I guess that Siemens Gamesa Renewable France is also facing the same challenges in terms of anticipating demand and commitment for investments. Could you tell us a little bit more about it?
So I need to stand because I do have slides, contrary to Regis. So thank you, Matteo, for the linking question. I think it's been mentioned before that Europe stands at a crossroads, facing what some might call a scale or fail in industrial competitiveness. And the expansion of offshore wind is not a burden on European competitiveness, although there's still debate on this right now. It enables, it strengthens our competitiveness, and it ensures our economic and strategic sovereignty, and it contributes to industrialization of Europe in an uncertain geopolitical context, as the president of the Brittany region reminded us. Let's see. How do I move the... In 1991, Siemens Gamesa built the world's first offshore wind farm in Denmark. And now, decades later, we continue to lead offshore wind, and we have installed now 5,000 offshore wind turbines globally. And it supplies now clean electricity to 27 million homes in Europe, in APAC, in the United States, which enhance our energy security, and it drives our regional economic growth through the skills and the jobs that were developed throughout the different geographies that we've been located in. Very few can boast such a track record, including in floating offshore wind with our 88 megawatt Hywind Tampen in Norway, and also our 24 megawatt Provence Grand Large pilot project in the south of France. In France, it comes on top of the 5 projects offshore wind that we are delivering progressively in France. 2 are operating, 1 will be built this summer, and 2 will be upcoming in the next few years. And this is happening on top from our facility, a manufacturing facility in Le Havre for nacelle and blades. And it is done and couldn't be done without the support of French port infrastructure, such as Le Havre, Cherbourg, Brest, and Saint-Nazaire, where we are developing and building our projects from. Now, despite an uncertain environment, Siemens Gamesa invests further in our supply chain, in our factories to build up our capabilities throughout Europe and make sure that obviously we deliver on the clean, competitive, affordable energy that we target. So mark my word, there is no capacity issue in wind turbines in Europe. In France, we just announced earlier this year the extension of our factory, and it will produce 115 meter blades for our new generation platform of 14 megawatts. It represents more than 200 million investment, for which we got a 25% tax credit from the French government. We will be able to create an additional 200 jobs, direct and indirect locally, and we're also investing and ramping up other facilities throughout Europe, for instance, in Germany, Denmark, or United Kingdom. What do we need to secure industrialization of offshore wind, especially floating? So I don't have an hour for myself, so I'll try to make it short. 5 main points. First and foremost, we need to boost electrification, because there is no need for more production if it is not to transition from fossil fuels to electricity, as Régis has reminded us. So we need electricity in refineries, green steel, mobility on land, at sea, in the air, and that's where the RED III implementation will be key. Second, long-term market visibility, as an industrial and as also Régis reminded. This is what we need. We had ample time for debate. Hermine Durand reminded the timeline for the French maritime spatial planning, and it is now time for action. So in France, it needs to come with the multi-annual energy plan publication in the coming weeks. It needs to be the launch and the award of round 9 and round 10 by end 2026. It is paramount to ensure a stable future for our factories and for the jobs and the supply chain that has been developing locally for the French offshore wind industry. And now it's sort of the tipping point for floating wind with those rounds. So keeping the timeline will be key. The third point is building resilient grids and infrastructure. Again, Régis point that out for grids. And we mentioned, obviously, that port infrastructure will be key to deliver what we need. Simplification, standardization will be important to accelerate the execution timeline of the projects, because even though we keep on awarding, it still takes around 10 years to make sure the projects are commissioned in France. So it will be important to keep on that. And last but not least, we need a level playing field for manufacturers, and that's where the Clean Industrial Act and the NZIA come into play to ensure also our industrial sovereignty and the sustainability of the supply chain and the skills that have been developed throughout Europe. Now the challenge lies into implementing these ambitions into reality. So to summarize, it's time for debate has passed, now time for action and turning our objectives into reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Yara. So we talked about connection to the grid. We talked about turbine. That's a great start, but it's not enough. Wind farms are made of other things, other players. There are other needs. For example, we need floaters. We need ports to produce nearby them, store them, and launch them. Those are very concrete challenges. Aldric, from a producer point of view, you've been last year awarded the French the first world floating wind farm project in the south of Brittany. From your perspective, what are the main, let's say, industrial challenges that you see for your project and all the others that will follow in the world? Easy one for you, Aldrich.
Thanks very much, Matteo. May I just start with some introduction words before answering your question. So first of all, we are very happy, Penavel, honored to sponsor that edition of FOWT. I think Brest was missing FOWT and FOWT was missing Brest. So it's done, almost done. It's only starting. Next slide. Yes. First of all, so Penavel is a joint venture between Elisio and BayWa RE, as you can see in the screen, two pure players in renewable energy. Elisio is a developer active in Europe in onshore and offshore wind, and Elisio develops, finances, builds, and operates all its assets. Elisio has about 2.5 gigawatt of offshore wind portfolio, half of which is operational in the Belgian North Sea, and the other half is a floating project under secure development. BayWa RE is a global leading renewable developer and service provider. BayWa is active worldwide in onshore, offshore wind, but also solar PV and energy storage. BayWa has put online more than 6 gigawatts of energy projects and operates over than 10 gigawatts of assets. Elisio and BayWa co-own Penavel, but also co-own Buchan Offshore Wind together with BW Ideol, a 1 gigawatt floating project under development in Scotland. And as you can see on the map in the middle of the slide, for many years, Elisio and BayWa has been active in the Brittany region for their onshore activities and now offshore. Brittany is a region we well know, and that is very dear to us. Penavel. Penavel is the first commercial-scale floating wind with a fully secured development path to construction. What does it mean? It means that Penavel has secured a concession, a grid connection, and a CFD. The concession, as shown on the map, is an offshore site about 20 kilometers off the coast of Belle-Île-en-Mer and about 40 from Lorient. The grid connection, as reminded by Régis, is under the responsibility of RTE, the French TSO, and it includes the offshore assets, offshore substation. The third is the contract for difference as it has been mentioned by Mrs. Durand earlier today, strike price of 86.45 euro per megawatt hour, 20-year CFD indexed. So Penavel will be up to 270 megawatt project. We anticipate a FID 2029 and a COD end of 31. It will enable to feed about 450,000 inhabitants with green electricity. So to come back to your question, Matteo, sorry, a little bit diverting. First of all, we see three ambitions. And maybe I should start by stating that it's not the only core point of the attention of Penavel. Of course, environment, sea users, fishermen, and stakeholder management is key for us. I just focus here on a more technical and industrial aspect of the project. So first, we have an ambition to maximize the recourse to local supply chain and the creation of local jobs. This ambition, we have started to work it out and to build it with the Britain region, with the industrial cluster BPN during the standard stage, and it has been recognized by the award of the Braze label the Braze content label awarded by BPN a year ago. However, to make it happen, the supply chain needs visibility, and I would say not visibility, but certainty on volumes and timeline. As it has been mentioned previously, we need an effective energy law and the forthcoming offshore wind tenders, a huge part of it being floating, as it has been mentioned. The second one is the ports, because floating winds needs ports. We have a lot of ports in France, and Brest is an outstanding one. However, ports must be able to hoist the fabrication of concrete and steel or steel floaters. And this implies huge investment. So it has been mentioned the ongoing call for tender managed by the French state, but however, we encourage public support to be enhanced to allow for commercial scale deployment of floating wind and the critical infrastructures that are needed to make it happen. And of course, we need those infrastructures to be ready on time. It means 2029. Last but not least, I will come back to turbine, as it has been mentioned earlier, because, as you know, there are many potential suppliers for floaters, for moorings, for cables. But it's a matter of fact that there is a very small number of VTG suppliers with capability in floating wind. So we strongly encourage VTG suppliers to increase their support to floating wind development with a long-term vision based on technology and volume. And of course, as far as possible, local manufacturing. And we come back to the first point I just mentioned, because as you know, it's all interlinked. To conclude, we are numerous here from Penavel, and we'll be very happy to discuss with you and to welcome you on our booth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aldric. As we can see, those challenges are especially complex, and even more because we are at the very beginning of the, let's say, industrial phase of floating offshore wind. We've talked a lot, as you said, Yara. Now we will need to move on, but we are only at the beginning of this phase. That being said, in France, it was mentioned by Régis, we have 3 pilot floating offshore wind projects, with one already producing electricity. That's yours, Benoît, at least EDF Renewables 1. So could you tell us a bit more about this project and what you've learned so far from this project?
Yes, thank you, Matteo, and good morning, everybody. So we are very proud to be able to share some feedback about this project, Provence Grand Large. No. I want it to be bigger, but it's okay. So this floating wind farm, Provence Grand Large, it's the first floating wind farm which has been built in France, and the first one in the Mediterranean Sea. It's located 17 kilometers from Port Saint-Louis-du-Rhône. It's composed of 3 turbines with a total capacity of 25 megawatts in a water depth of 100 meters. It will provide electricity to the equivalent of 45,000 people. So its construction, as mentioned by Matteo, is fully completed. The connection to the grid is operational, and the power purchase agreement has been in effect since November 2024. 2 out of the 3 turbines are connected to the grid and injecting electricity, and the third one is currently in the final testing phase in order to be able to soon declare the final COD. So PGL brings us many valuable lessons for the deployment of floating wind power on a commercial scale. First, regional anchoring has been really essential. PGL is an innovative project with strongly rooted in the region and could not have been completed without the support of its territory. We have had a very close collaboration with the harbor of Marseille-Fos to benefit from industrial port infrastructures and logistics that are essential for the construction of such a floating project. In this regard, local port infrastructure had to be specifically adapted for the project. The integration of the wind turbine at the port requires, rather than at sea for bottom-fixed projects, requires several adaptations. So we needed to reinforce the storage area, modify the docks. The sizing of bollards have been made in line with the mooring systems of the floaters. We also had to use a new onshore crane to lift the nacelles at a height of 150 meters, every nacelle being at a weight of 500 tons. And we also needed a wet storage area for the floating wind turbine before the deployment at sea. So this successful collaboration with the port has allowed to provide all this infrastructure for the project, and it has been crucial for the successful completion of the project. Furthermore, so the construction had to be located on some existing industrial site for such a small project. So we had also to ensure that we would have a good co-activity among port operators. The project has benefited from a temporary construction site with all activities being performed in the same area with the construction of the floaters, the loadouts, the wet storage, and the turbine integration before the start of the towing. And unlike bottom-fixed projects, turbine manufacturers and floater constructors had to work closely together, but still under the responsibility of the project, and this was very key for the coordination between all activities. Lastly, so PGL has provided valuable technical experience. So these learnings will allow now to optimize the design for future commercial projects, both in engineering and in the construction methods. But we have still new challenges ahead of us to deploy floating wind project on a larger scale and in a competitive manner. We have first the challenge of industrialization in the manufacturing and assembly of the floaters in series in order to optimize then the costs. So we need first to create favorable industrial port conditions. We've mentioned what was needed for PGL for future commercial projects. So we will need much larger, suitable ports and industrial areas for such activities. So the call for projects by ADEME for the development of those port infrastructure to meet the needs of the floating wind industry is a step in the right direction, but seems insufficient to us. So in addition to providing additional public funding, we believe it is crucial to reserve the port areas in order to be able to mobilize the French ports for the French projects. We need also to quickly adapt the infrastructures to these specific requirements. We also need to improve the port competitiveness because French ports currently face competitiveness gaps with their other European competitors. We've done some analysis and assessment of construction, assembly, and maintenance costs between the French ports and their competitors, and it reveals significant differences that be cost of port leases, port fees, labor costs, or as well custom tariffs. So we need to reduce these gaps. We can also enhance the attractiveness of the French harbors by simplifying administrative procedures, like as it has been done for the offshore wind projects. So we could also take advantage of all regulatory, legislative, and commercial avenues for simplification and acceleration of the industry, and extend them to the benefit of infrastructure projects undertaken by the ports to serve the needs of the offshore floating industry. For example, permits with variable characteristics, imperative reasons for major public interests, accelerating processing of authorization requests, expedited handling of appeals, or anticipated stated notifications. I will now talk of another key challenge for the projects, which is the turbine supply on European scale, as mentioned by Yara and several people this morning. So the NDIA regulations, which was adopted in June 2024, aims to ensure diversification of supply sources in various technologies. Currently, so European players have a strong position in the offshore wind market. And future tenders will also include objectives in this regard. In our perspective of developers, so we believe that these objectives should be pursued while considering several equally important issues for the resilience of our industry. So first, we should avoid isolating the French market from the rest of Europe. Because if we impose specific constraints only on French tenders, such as supply of certain components, we may be in contradiction with the organization of value chains. So it's important for the French markets that will represent only 10 to 15% of the European market, that it can use the same value chains as other countries. So this NDIA regulation, which is at a European level, should be implemented and should be consistent with the interest of the national energy transition objectives. Second, we should avoid reducing competition and innovation, because over the last decade, we have experienced significant consolidation of the market. So we should still focus on competition and innovation. And the design of tenders, among other factors, should contribute to maintaining this dynamic. And third, we should avoid making mistakes in the allocation of risks. As we are, with the tenders, we are encouraged to build offers based on local content. We have incentives to maximize local production, and this is very, very good. However, we should allow for flexibility in the expected commitments, because we will not be able to verify all these commitments are met before a few years of development for each project. And without flexibility in the assessment of these commitments, we will probably have difficulties sometimes to implement projects as per the proposed conditions. So I will conclude reminding that so we need still important volumes to continue to develop the industry. For floating wind project, we think the target volume for each project should be 1 gigawatt capacity in order to allow some economies of scale. And as well, the French context provides very good risk allocation, and we are really we really want to maintain this risk allocation, and in particular the CFD contract, because those projects are quite risky, and it is a very good asset for France to have such a framework. Thank you.
Thank you, Benoît. That was very rich. Many subjects, many topics. that we might have time at the end to talk a little bit more about. But before that, so we saw in the public policy roundtable that each country has its own targets, its own tender rules. Some are more appealing than others for developers. For example, some are very appealing, like in France, where we have indeed the two-sided indexed CFD, which is a very good thing that we need to keep in France, but it's not the case everywhere. On that, Tina, as an international developer, also active in France, responding to the tenders and so on, what makes a market attractive for you, and what does you look when considering new opportunities?
Thank you very much for inviting me to the panel, and thank you very much for the question, and thank you very much for staying here until this very end of the session, because as last speaker, that gives me the chance to not only bring the EnBW perspective to you, but also maybe to connect some of the dots that have been said before from the previous speakers. Let's zoom out a little bit before answering the question. Floating offshore wind is not only about huge dimensions, tons of concrete and steel, auction designs, but it's about building the future energy system. And that sounds pathetic, and maybe it is, but actually that is what we are doing all together, building the energy system of the future. One that balances, and I try to go to the next slide, ta-da. One that balances the triangle, the conflicting priorities, climate protection, affordability, and security of supply. And that is exactly what EnBW brings as perspective to the table. We are the only fully integrated energy company in Germany. We operate across the entire value chain, so from power generation to bringing molecules and electrons to the customers, to B2C and B2B customers. And what we want is that restructuring the energy market, the energy system, that we do that in an intelligent way, in a smart way, so that the triangle of conflicting priorities, climate protection, affordability, and supply, security of supply are balanced, because only by doing that we can increase and keep the public acceptance which we need to do our work. For the ones that are maybe not too familiar with EnBW, which is of course an unlikely case, but for those of you, I tell you a bit more about who we are. As I said, we are a fully integrated utility company with over 30,000 people. We are majority owned by public shareholders, so it is the federal state of Baden-Württemberg and OEW that is also based in Baden-Württemberg, and an intermunicipal association. And Baden-Württemberg, that is the dark orange spot in the very south of Germany, next to France. And I'm proud to say that we've transformed from a very conventional, classic utility company to an innovative and sustainable infrastructure partner. We are in production, trading, and transmission of molecules and electrons, water and heating, and for our customer, we do both renewables and conventional. We have also grown as an infrastructure partner, providing, for example, fast charging infrastructure for e-mobility, home storage systems, and telecommunication. When it comes to France, we say that France is our second home market. And that is why in 2019 we fully integrated Valeco, a well-established and respected developer in France that you might know, I'm sure. We didn't want to operate from abroad. We wanted to be local, wanted to be, have boots on the ground, be in France, and that's exactly where we are today. We have Valeco with its incredible 30 years of experience in developing renewables. And we have EnBW Valeco Offshore, the face of our offshore activities in France, with multidisciplinary teams spread around the French coastlines and close to the local companies, engaging with the regional stakeholders. So you see that we are fully prepared to playing a role in France's offshore journey. Having a deeper look on our offshore activities. So currently we are operating almost 1 gigawatt in the Baltic and North Sea in Germany. And we are about to add another gigawatt, almost 1 gigawatt to that during this year. That is our project under construction, Hydrai, that is also in Germany. And we have our pipeline that is in development with almost 7 gigawatt in the UK and in Germany. And all of this serves a larger goal because EnBW plans to phase out coal in 2028 and become climate neutral by 2035. That is, of course, an ambitious target, but we think it is needed, and offshore wind is the strategic lever, the strongest lever to go there, to get there. So what developers need to succeed in an offshore wind market, now I come to the question, to answer the question Matteo asked us. From our experience, there are 4 things that need to be there to succeed, to have a successful offshore wind market. First, a stable political environment with a clear commitment to long-term target and a clear strategy behind it. Also, a strong rule of law that allows fair competition. Second, it is predictability. So we need a transparent permitting process that reduces uncertainty and also allows to lower the cost of capital. Third, and I'm sure you have heard that today a lot of times, we need reliable infrastructure and supply chain. That means we start with the basic requirements of an industrial harbor, followed by a supply chain that is both ideally locally and competitive, and of course many skilled workers to support us in our work. And fourth, we need a harmonized implementation of EU legislation. With the Net Zero Industry Act, the NZIA, the European Union started to provide us with some level of EU-wide harmonization for offshore tenders, and it is now on us to implement those into local law. So the NZIA provides ideas how a well-structured, transparent, accurate, non-price criteria can look like, and that they must be transparent, comprehensible, robust, and resilient. That is important for us. Another topic is cybersecurity, and with the energy sector being the most, being the sector that is attacked most by cyber attacks, I think that needs a stronger focus on cybersecurity and also needs a stronger focus on implementation of cybersecurity laws coming from the European Union. So for example, we have the NIS2 directive, the Network Information System Directive that is given to strengthen the European projects. And that is even more important when it comes to interconnectors between countries, because that would make our, which are absolutely needed, but that would make our infrastructure offshore even more vulnerable. So having now a look on the French market and its strengths and weaknesses, we must say that there is a lot to be positive about. A well-designed tender that combines lease and support in one auction, that has an indexed two-sided CFD for 20 years, that has a 50 years of concession, and that already has a basis for qualitative non-price criteria, with a grid connection that is not in the scope of the developers, but, for example, with RTE. And in France, we have different geographical sites, locations with various features, so that means that the developers can choose according to their strength on which project they want to focus on. And we have ambitious offshore targets, which are not over-ambitious, which is also needed from our point of view. At the same time, there are some uncertainties that need attention. The political support needs to remain strong and consistent. The targets, the permitting procedure still holds significant risks. And the transposition of the Net Zero Industry Act into local law, into French law, needs to be done quickly so that we have the certainty how it will look like and so that we can prepare for it. Concluding, our verdict is that France provides a very good opportunity for offshore wind developers, especially with the CFD design that reduces project risk significantly. And we are very happy to keep being present in the French market. And last slide is gone, obviously, but there will only be a merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Tina, and sorry for this last slide. I don't know where it is. Thank you to all of you. Maybe just one pretty large question to end, and so we can all go to lunch. I really like your expression, Régis, of crew spirit, and I think this is a great opportunity with this conference to develop a genuine crew spirit. And I'd like to hear all of you about what are, from your perspective, the concrete actions we can have at short term, at our individual level, so our company, your different companies level, to really create this, let's say, international, but even maybe more European crew spirit to share the cake, which is, I think, big enough for everybody. But I do believe that if we do not create this genuine crew spirit, the size of the cake might shrink in. So I'd like to hear the point of all of you, if you have one on this. What can we do concretely, starting today, tomorrow, and the days after, to create this crew spirit? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. What is happening today and what happened a couple weeks ago in Wind Europe at Copenhagen is the main action about doing crew, like faire équipage, so crew spirit. This is where all the stakeholders, from the policymakers to the state services, to the developers, the industrials, the trade association, everyone is there to discuss how to best prepare for the future. So I think what's happening for the next few days is the main action. Now, when you say how to share the cake, a few years back, so 2010, when the offshore wind market was just starting in France, there was that notion that it had to be dedicated to the French supply chain. French players, French-based players. Today, if the governments, plural, Europe goes in the direction they've set themselves for their climate targets and our sovereignty, the cake is so big that there's not a question about it needs to be targeted to me, industrial, locally based in France. Everyone needs to ramp up, everyone needs to prepare, because the wall of investment delivery capabilities that we need to deliver on the objective is huge. So now it's more all hands on deck to make sure that we are capable of delivering. First thing first, we still need the policies to be implemented in a harmonized way throughout Europe and very quickly. Coming back to now move to action.
Yes, for me, one of the main action is to build an integrated industrial planning shared with industry, government, to really see where are the bottlenecks, the key interfaces, and to be realistic on what means to be on time industrially, not politically, industrially. Because I think it could be a big weakness if we give plannings that we are not able to achieve. And it's a co-responsibility. It's a co-responsibility. I cannot say today, it's a rocket science subject, or we will make the deep sea foundations for the next floating offshore wind farms. So we need time, we need to assess different options, we need to discuss with industrials about what is possible, at what cost. We also need to see how to make the trial test with offshore wind farms with HVDC offshore substations. To sum up, we need to have around 20% of generation in the connection grid to make the final trials. So it's not so easy to see when we will have 20% of generation available on a floating offshore wind farm. So we need to discuss, see the issues, share the planning, share the interfaces, the interdependencies, to be really robust and credible on the industrial roadmap.
I can share my view of this crew spirit in terms of deployment of the industry. So we have a long path ahead of us to structure the industry and the value chains. And even if we are during tenders in tough competition between developers, I think we should really think of what will be the target in terms of value chain in several years in order to be able to deploy this program. That means that when we talk with all stakeholders, arbors, but also suppliers, manufacturers, we should really keep in mind that their assets should be long-term assets in order to be able to produce important volumes and not only some one project or few projects equipments. So it's very important, and it's some spirit that we can have among developers, but that is also shared, that should be also shared with all stakeholders and collectivities with whom we discuss all the time, and that are also great support for the industry.
Thank you. I fully support what you just mentioned and said. As Penavel, I think that we have some kind of responsibility to draw the path at our level with our means, and I think that that's true spirit to be very practical. I just mentioned the necessity of visibility, investment in ports and wind turbines for floating application. But to be even more practical, local content is built in a collaboration with the local forces. Of course, local content which is not competitive is a nonsense. So we need to build competitive local content hands with the local regions. And if I look to the projects of Benoît, of course, if you do 50% of local content near Marseille or Narbonne, then there is many opportunities also for the supply chain here in Brittany to participate to those projects.
Okay, thank you. I think we have some similar thoughts on that. What I would also like to add is that there is some flexibility needed because we have ambitious targets in complete Europe. The supply chain needs to get ready, but it needs time and support to do so, to build and extend capacity, production capacity, as you just mentioned in your speech. That is important. And for the developer side, it is important that here we have the flexibility to react until the supply chain is ready, so that we need to be able to shift a COD date according to the supply chain requirements. And of course, if we have an extensive sanction mechanism that is against shifting milestones, that is nothing a developer likes to see, and because we just react on the supply chain, and we need to support them.
Thank you to all of you for your speeches, your views on this. So everybody agrees on the need to create a spirit team, so that's perfect. I would let everybody go for lunch. Maybe just to conclude, if I had to maybe remember one word from this session, I would say it's to share. So let's share all together with the rest of the conference. First, let's eat, but then let's share. So thanks again to all of you five for your time, your speak, and thanks for your attention at the very end of the conference. And have a great lunch and good days.